All right. Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to day one of our 366 Design Masterclass. Um, so while we wait for others to join the class, or while we wait for others to be part of this, we just want to ask a few questions, and you guys can drop your question or your answer uh, in the chat box, and then we are going to select the winners from whoever gets the question right, and we're going to reach out to you. Anyways, you're going to be reached out to through the chat box also. So the first question we're going to be asking for today is, what is one thing that you noticed from the previous videos that we've had on our channel and the video that we have today, or should I say the image you're looking at today? What's the difference with the two of them in the scene you're looking at? What's the difference, right? So if you know the answer to that and you're not a team member from you're not a team member from Afrogang, then I think you should drop your answer to that question in the comment box, or in the chat box rather, and someone will reach out to you if you get the answer right. Okay, I can see Elizabeth is joining from Cross River State. Okay, I'm Tammy joining from Imo State. Wow, that's nice. We have people from different parts of Nigeria joining in, right? So please go ahead to let us know where you're joining from. You can say your name. You can just tell us where you're joining from. But by 2:30 proper, we should be kicking off our class. Wonderful, wonderful. We have Jennifer from Owerri. That's good. Okay, okay. Um, all right. So by 2:30 we'll be kicking off the class properly. So let's wait for others to join in. Let's wait for others to join in. Let's wait for the rest of the guys to join in so that we can kick off the class. But I'll have you guys know that it's going to be recorded and edited. So after the class, you can also go back to it and watch it. Right? You can go back to it, watch it, understand it. But it's going to be an engaging class where we are going to have like, you know, practical assessments that are going to be submitted, and also we'll have like a link that will be created for you guys to submit your assignments, assessments, and all that, and all the likes. So yeah, welcome Roots from Lagos. All right. The question that I asked from the onset is, if you've snooped around the channel, what's one thing that is different from welcome Mary from Lagos? If you've snooped around the channel before, what's something that you're seeing currently on the screen, or you're seeing currently on my stream, that you did not see before? What's one thing that is new currently on the setup, or currently on our our the view you're currently looking at? What's something that is different currently if you've snooped around? If you get the answer right, then you're going to be reached out to. You'll get it's a little something for you if you've. It shows that, oh, you've actually snooped around the channel and you've noticed a few things. So what's something different from the videos we have before and what you're watching currently? If you can spot that, then you have something for you. Right, we have just a little over 8 minutes before we kick off the class. So we're also going to send an update on the channel to let you guys know that we are live. And if you've not joined, please join the live so we can have a very wonderful and interactive class today. I'll have you guys know that I think this is kind of a different setting where you get to ask questions directly, because other YouTubers just set, drop, or leave a beginner tutorial, and you go, you watch, then you might drop a comment, and then your comment might not be responded to. But in this class, it's going to be a conversative class, a discussion class where I respond to all you guys have to ask, and also have a few questions of my own. Okay. Double display. Yeah, you mean this and this? Is this what you're talking about? You mean there's one here and then there's another one here? Is that the double display you're talking about? Yeah, I think that should be Mary. Mary, right? Is that the double display you're talking about? Right, right, right. Okay. Well, let's hold on. Let's hold that thought. You know what? I'm going to write that down, and we'll get back to that. So that's one question we've had so far. Very brilliant question, Mary. We're going to answer that further down in the class. So it's part of what you're going to be learning today because it's part of the Photoshop fundamentals that you're going to be learning today. Right, we have just 6 minutes until we start. So please write in the chat box where you're coming or where you're joining us from, where you're viewing from. If you want to tell us your name, that's fine. If you don't want, that's also fine. You can put up, you can also use your nickname or whatever you want us to call you. So it could be Mary. I mean, even if Mary is like a nickname to me, I'm Mary calling from or joining from Lagos. Yeah, so please let's know where you're joining us from. We're still waiting on others for the stream. We're still waiting on others so we can kick off the class. And it's going to be the same way um, the rest of the days. So we'll kick off 2:30 every day, but we join and have a little bit of review from like tomorrow. We're going to have like a review of what we've done today and some questions before we head into the next class. But for today, it's just introductions. I'm still here, guys. So while we're waiting for others, remember it's 4 minutes left till we kick off the class. 4 minutes left till we kick off the class. So you guys stay put in, introduce yourselves. We have Jennifer, we have Ruth, we have Mary, we have Tammy, we have Elizabeth joining us from all over Nigeria. Right. Okay. So while we're waiting for others, I'm going to do a brief introduction of myself so that you guys can get to know me and why I'm here to teach. So first off, I am Tamuno Yewuna. I'm a graphics designer, motion designer, video editor, and a little bit of WordPress website designer. I've been doing this for well over 10 years. I started off as a graphics designer in 2016 and well, professionally in 2016. And further down the line, I decided to dive into the dynamic world of video editing and motion editing because clients demanded dynamic visuals, above just static images. And further down that line also, I also dived into WordPress website design just because I love design and I wanted to expand my horizon. And I've been doing this for well over 8 years to 10 years. I think next year is going to be 10, 10 years as a professional, but I think it's going to be like 13 years as someone who loved the craft. And since then, I've had the motto, adding color to the world, one brand at a time. And that doesn't speak to brands only. It speaks to people that I come in contact with. And it speaks to the you viewers that are going to be learning today, because I'm going to be adding color to your world. If you're a beginner with with little knowledge, rather, if you're a beginner with little knowledge, or you're just fully a beginner, then this is the right class for you, because I'm about to change the narrative on what you've known to what you will know moving forward. Right. So, with that being said, let's dive into Photoshop. Now, we're here in the magical world of Photoshop. What I would like us to do is, if you have a pen, if you have a paper, I want you to write it down so that it's easy for you to follow along or to go back to. Yes, the class is going to be recorded and uploaded for you guys to still go back to, just in case you miss something. But we're in the magical world of Photoshop. Now, first thing you notice when you come to Photoshop is we have two things. The first one is our, should I say, workspace. This is our workspace. If you follow my mouse, all these areas where you have this light gray around, this is our workspace. Now, they have different uh, names or different segments of our workspace. I'll use that word. We have different segments of our workspace. Now, the first segment and the most important segment is the title segment or the menu segment. Now, in this menu segment, we have the likes of file, edit, image, layer, type, select, filter, 3D, view, plugins, window, and help. Now, on the other side of it, we have minimize, restore, and close. Now, the reason why this is the most important is this, these guys could dictate what every other thing on the workspace does. These guys can dictate what every other thing does. I'll give an example. If you come to window and you set and you click on, let's say, actions, you notice that something pops up. So these guys are like dictators on what happens in Photoshop in general. So these guys are what dictators. That's the reason why they are called titles or menus, right? So the ones we'll be touching in the beginners class would be majorly the file, right? And first things first, you need to know how to open a document in Photoshop. That's like that's the fundamental thing. You need to know how to open a file or open a new document in Photoshop. Now, I want you guys to walk with me. Okay. Someone is asking if this is an app or a site. This is an app. You can either get it from Adobe's official website, or I think you could also use it on the phone, but for the sake of this class, we're using it on the laptop. You can get it from Play Store also, but we're working with the laptop version, so you can get it from adobe.com, right? So I think that answers your question, right? So we back to what we're saying. We have to learn how to open a file or a document in Photoshop. Now, what we've understood so far is we have our workspace, which is this. Following my mouse, this is our workspace. Also, this is included in the workspace. This line on there is included. Everything here in gray is our workspace. Now, over to opening a new file. Now, if you click on new, you have different pre-installed file types that Photoshop, would naturally give you, because they already have these things that people use that have like custom paper sizes and all those kind of stuff. But now we're working with an e-flyer, or we're working with a general creation of a flyer. Now, what you need to understand is, when creating a new file, you need to name your file. This is going to help save you the struggle, because it happens to the best of us. It also happens to me, where you're working on the project, you don't have it saved, and then your Photoshop crashes. Look, it's a bug. They've been trying to fix it over the years, but it constantly happens. It doesn't matter the type of PC you use, it doesn't matter what um year or what model of laptop you're using or whatever. It happens to the best of us. So you always want to name your file. So the first thing you do is you name your file. I'm going to call this, excuse me, I'm going to call this test task. Now, we have pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters. For the sake of this class, these are the things that we are going to be working with, because these are the dominant ones we have in our region in Africa, right? So I'm going to start with pixels. Pixels is the smallest, should I say smallest, or smallest box you have, or the smallest tiny bit of uh, box you have on images. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll come back to this, and we're going to zoom in to this image. We are going to zoom in all the way to this image. Now you notice that we have different boxes. If you can see, we have different boxes. So this is 1 pixel. These are what we call pixels. This box here is a pixel. This is me being practical about it. So this is a pixel. Now let's go back out. That pixel has, like, those pixels are what makes up this image. If you see, there are different colors of those pixels. You have the ones that are in a different shade, you have the ones that are in this shade, you have different boxes of those pixels that make up an image. And that's the smallest, tiniest bit or particle that makes up images. That is a pixel. Now, moving on creating a file. Let's go back there. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this to notice is so that you don't make the mistake of creating a too large a file or too small a file. Now, this width is from left to right, the size of your image from left to right, and then the height is the size of your image from the top to the bottom. So that's how it's being measured. So this is not the size of your image, or this does not affect the size of your image. What affects the size of your image is your resolution. So your resolution is what would determine if your image is going to be heavy or light. If your image is going to have like a huge output when you're exporting, or is going to have, a very minimal output, and that's the reason why it's called resolution. So if you're working in pixels, you know that you have to work in higher numbers, because a higher amount of pixel would come up, like, let's say if you're coming up with 10 inches, 10 inches will comprise of like 10,000 pixels, or 1,000 pixels would make 10 inches. So you need to look at it from that perspective. Now, moving on to inches, just like I said, if you go back to pixels, you see we have 1024 pixels in 14 inches, 14.2 inches. So you see that as you go up, the amount reduces. Now, if we're increasing from inches to centimeters, you see that it changes because inches and centimeters are different in size or different in measurement. Yeah. So 12 inches make 1 foot, and then I think about 36 inches or 32 inches make a foot. 32 centimeters rather make a foot, right? So all these are parameters that you need to understand. Now look at millimeters. Millimeters, they are smaller than centimeters. So you see that 361 millimeters make up 36.12 centimeters. So these are things that you need to factor in so that you don't create too big a file and you don't create too small a file. Now we are going to create too big a file and we are going to create too small a file. Now let's start with too small a file. If our resolution is at 45 and we create this, notice the drop from what we had here to what Photoshop showed us here to show you that this file is very small. And then if you look at the lower left of your workspace, you'd see document. It shows 900.0 kilobytes, and then the output is what? 0 bytes. And bytes is like the smallest size when it comes to file sizes. Bytes is like the smallest. So you have 0 bytes, and this 0 bytes, it means it's very small. So if we add a text here, you see what we have here is 667.5 kilobytes for this file, that for this text that we just added. Now let's create too big a file. Remember, you go to File, New, and then you create your file. Now you can select from whichever one Photoshop has pre-installed, or you create your own by just typing in parameters here and click create. So let's type in our parameters and make it very big. So inches is kind of like the biggest here. So let's go for 30 inches by, let's say 300 inches, yeah, by 300 inches. And then our resolution at 300. Let's create. Now, if you look here, what you're seeing is 22.6 gigabytes. And not everybody's system will be able to handle it just like mine did. Sometimes it could take so long to pop up. It could take so long for it to load up. And this is not something that we need. This is not something that everybody would want. Let me quickly zoom in on this so that you see what I'm talking about. You see that we have here 22.6, which is this is not what we are looking for. This is not what we need. Excuse me. This is not what we need. And this is like what I said. This is what happens to the best of us. Sometimes we just forget ourselves, create a file, and we don't know that it starts off at, let's say, 2 or 3 gig, and we start designing and adding elements, and at some point Photoshop just gives up and crashes on us, and we lost everything that we've started working on, right? So that's basically what we try to avoid when creating a file. So now that we have this out of the way, let's move on to the practicals and the fundamentals of Photoshop. Now, for every tool that I give you here, there is a shortcut to it. So whatever tool that I'm giving you here, you guys should note the shortcuts, because in the further down the line, I'm going to ask questions about the shortcuts. Now, let's imagine that we've created a new file, and this is our new file. Now, at the top on our toolbar, this is our toolbar. If you watch this bar here where we have all these icons listed out here, this is our toolbar, right? And then before we get into the toolbar, I want to also point out something. At the top, just underneath our menu, we have our status bar. Now, this status bar, just like the word implies, it changes based on the tool that is active. So whatever tool that you have selected would affect the status bar, and that's the reason why it's called status, because like we all know, status is something that changes, is subject to change. So if we select our text tool, we have a different status here. Now, first off, you realize that when you first install Photoshop, it has a default workspace. This workspace you can see here is my own personalized workspace. So let's revert to Photoshop's original workspace. Now, Photoshop's original workspace is Essentials, which is the default. And if you notice, I have mine set here. Further down the line, we are going to learn how to set our own workspace. But now, let's go back to the default so that everybody is working on the default. Now, this is what default is for Photoshop. Hold on, let me go back here and then reset Essentials. Exactly. Now, this is essential. This is how the essentials look. This is what you're going to be seeing if you're installing Photoshop for the first time. Now, let's work with that. We have our status bar here, which changes based on the tool that we have selected. And then for those of us that have smaller screens, maybe you have a 14-inch screen or 13-inch screen, you can also use this because I think in your system it's not going to be the toolbar will not be, all of the icons will not be visible. So all you need to do is come to this icon here and click on it, and then it would expand, and then you can now have all of them, all the tools selected. Right now, we have different types of tools. We have selection tools, retouching tools, and we have our, should I say, input tools. Input, when I say input, I mean so what we have are selection, retouching, and input tools. So these are the tools that we have when it comes to Photoshop, right? Now, under the selection tools, we have our move tool, and that is V on the keyboard. Our move tool, which is the very important tool. We have our move tool, and it's right. Sorry about that. Right, you guys can see it now. You guys can see it clearly now. Okay, so we have selection, we have retouching, and we have input tools. Now, let's start from the selection tools. We have our move tool. Now, if you look at it on your screen, you see it. The shortcut for that is the letter V on the keyboard. So if you click on V on the keyboard, then it's just going to automatically select the move tool. Now, the move tool is basically what we use to move things around, items or elements around. So let's say we add this element into our workspace. This is what you use to move things around. the next one to it is rectangular marquee tool. Now this is a very important tool because you can use it to crop, you can also use it to resize, and you can also use it to fill. Now we are going to use it in these three scenarios that I just mentioned. Now first one is going to be to crop things out. Let's use it in this. Right, so we have this, and then we need to crop something out. Speaking to crop, all you need to do first off is, if this layer, because let's go back, sometimes when you import images and you just want to crop out a particular segment of it to use for your image, not like the actual tracing crop, just a rough rectangular cut that you want to make from an image, what you need to do is, if you try to do it this way and then try to crop, or right click and try to do layer via copy, it works, but then you still have your image underneath it. But if you want to just take out a segment of this, right, and the other one you want to do away with it, that which is the best option for a beginner is you select the area you want. Let's say this is the area that we want from this image, and then you right click, and what you need to do is new layer. And once you click on new layer, you type in the name you want. If you just want, maybe you're lazy like I am, you don't want anything, then you can now just type it the way you want, and then all you need to do is layer via cut. Now layer via cut, would take this layer out and put it on a new layer. Then you can get rid of the former one that you had, and then you have this layer for yourself to work with it. But then I noticed something that was not there, and then I need you guys to know. Now, when trying to do this, if you just drag an image and drop it, or you bring an image into Photoshop, it's always imported as a smart object. Now, smart objects cannot be directly editable by Photoshop's base tools. You have to either rasterize it, because Photoshop is a raster based editing tool. So you have to rasterize it, and that is just simple. All you need to do is you right click on your image and make sure that it has been rasterized. Now there's a difference between a rasterized image and a smart object or a smart image, and I'll tell you. Now a rasterized image, let's put them two and two aside. Let's rasterize one of them, keep them on this side, and then let's keep our smart image on this side. So this is our smart image, this is our rasterized image. Now with this guy, we can just easily select with our marquee tool, which is M on the keyboard, just so you know, rectangular marquee tool, M on the keyboard, and move this around with our move tool. The side that we've selected, we can move it around to wherever we want it to be without having to further touch the image. And once we are done and we deselect this by right clicking, you right click and then you do deselect. Once you do that, you can now move this thing the way you have edited it with your marquee tool, or with whichever tool that you have used it earlier on. But now I digress. Let's go back to the main reason why we have this selected, which is our marquee tool. But before we do that, the Smart image, on the other hand, you cannot do that. You cannot move things around. It is still going to be all in one. You cannot do all this that you've had with this guy. So this is just something for you to note. Now let's get rid of this and focus back on this. So this is when it comes to cropping. This is how it works. You right click, layer via copy if you want to, select a particular part of an image, and use layer via copy for that. Now, in cases where you want to select and crop your composition to a particular thing, you need to right click and say excuse me. Yeah. So in a case where you want this selection that you've made to actually be your document, all you need to do is we have to now move over to a different tool, and then you click on your crop tool. Once you click on your crop tool, then it's going to automatically, excuse me, using once you click on your crop tool, then you can actually select your image or select the place that you have previously selected and have it automatically crop your composition to that particular area. But let's head back into our marquee tool and the properties that we're using it for. So we're done with the cropping section of things. Now we are moving to the fill section. Now, you're going to hear this a lot. When trying to fill a background, or when trying to fill a particular section of your composition, let's say I want to fill this section with a particular color, all I need to do is make sure that after I've selected the area I want to fill, I need to come down to this area where we have a plus icon in the lower right, which is called add new, and click on add a new layer. Now we are going to be hearing about layers a lot, but we are going to learn about them further down the line. And when you learn about them, it's going to be easier for you to digest and understand. Now we want to fill this area, or we want to color this area with a certain color. Now there are two ways to this. Either we select our brush tool, which is B on the keyboard. We would dive deeper into the brush tool, but for this purpose we're just going to select it, which is B on the keyboard, and then paint the area that has been selected. Once we are done, you can go back to your marquee tool and right click, and then you deselect. Then you have this layer of yellow block. Now you can also do it a different way. Let's go back, which is by filling it with the foreground color. Now, how do you do that? You right click, and then you do okay. Yeah, now that's the error. We don't have a new layer selected or a new layer created. That's the reason why some of the options were not available. So we need to always create new layers when we have, when we want to fill like a background or a certain section in our workspace. So we need to add a new one, a new layer. Right click, and then you see fill. Once you click on fill, it will show you these options: foreground color, background color, a certain color, content aware, pattern, black, pure white. But now foreground color is the color that you have here, and then the background color is the one that you have underneath. And then this color is like if you want to select a particular color. Now we are going to get into content aware and pattern further down the line, but let's head into using our foreground color, which is orange. Now if you click on this and click OK, it automatically fills it for you with that color. Now this speaks to the filling aspect of the rectangular marquee tool. Then moving over to the next one on the list, which is the lasso tool, a very vast tool. There's something I want you guys to know, that they are parent tools and they are just ordinary tools. Like when I see a parent tool, I want you guys to write this down. We have parent tools. Parent tools are tools that have children tools under them. So for example, our move tool. In recent updates, Photoshop has added a different or should I say a child tool under the move tool. And if you right click on that, you would see it has the artboard tool, but that is for an advanced user. We're still trying to learn and understand the basics. Now, in this rectangular marquee tool that we just worked or used or touched, we can also see that we have children tools, but they all do the same thing that the parent tool does, but in different shapes. Now, I would not advise anybody to use the single row marquee tool, because it's basically, it does the same thing, but then it's, look, this is basically what it does, just one line. So it's to demarcate from, up and down, or maybe left and right if you're selecting the column one. So this is basically what it does. It's not useful for a beginner. But then we have the elliptical marquee tool, which you can use, which is a circle that you can use to create circles if you want to. And you can still go through the same process we went through for the square to crop out a particular segment spherically from a document, or like let's say we want to do the same thing to this guy, but we want it to look circular. It's the same way. We right click, we do layer via copy, and we have that side copied out, and it has this curve to it. Right. So now that is that on parent and children tool. And remember, whenever you see a parent tool, they always tend to have like this arrow at the extreme that points down to other tools that they have. So these are what we call parent tools. Now, under these parent tools, we have some tools that actually do things differently from what their parent does, but they are all in the same line. They are all in the same, I would say, in the same, I would call it retroscope, or in the same, they are in the same niche. Let's use that word. For lack of better words, they are in the same niche. Now, moving on to the lasso tool. This is going to be, we're going to start with the parent tool of the lasso tool is actually the lasso tool, but most people use the polygonal lasso tool, and I would say why. Now, this is basically for cropping of images, or yeah, removing of items from their background, and we are going to put that to the test now. So let's get an image that requires cropping, and let's go through the process. I feel excited. Do you guys feel excited? If you feel excited, please write excited down in the chat. Let's see. All right, let's get this image that has a background. Good. Now we have this image and we want to take out this white background from it. We can use this to take out the image. All you need to do is you trace around it. This particular lasso tool requires a steady hand. So if you have a steady hand, then be my guest. Go ahead and do that. So this is me tracing around my image that I want to crop. Like I said, you have to have like a steady hand to use this. And the moment you let go of your mouse, it automatically snaps back to where you started from. So this is like the disadvantage of this. And that's the reason why people don't really use this. But just for the sake of the understanding, let's do it. Right. Now, this has been done, and sometimes you can make mistakes as a beginner. Here is how I feel you should know how to correct that mistake. Now, in cases like this where you didn't want to let go of your mouse but mistakenly you did, all you need to do is you can add to the selection you've made. And how do you add to the selection that you've made? You hold shift on the keyboard and you see the plus icon. Once you see that plus icon, you continue drawing. Permit my hand, right? I'm a bit excited for today's class. And that's why I'm drawing this like this. So you add to this. And then you see that it has added that selection you made. Now, how do you remove the background now? All you need to do is you right click and then you do the normal thing we did for the onset. So it's kind of like similar. And then you do layer via copy. Now you have this guy removed from the background. Yes, it's not too great, but this is me explaining how the lasso tool in itself works. Now, let's move on to the child of the lasso tool, which is the one that most people use 100% of the time. Let's go over to the polygonal lasso tool. This one is click based. When I say click based, it's based on when you click. So if you click, you see that you can drag it to the next point that you want it to be. Now, in pictures or images like this, it's pretty straightforward. But when you come to images like, pictures of human beings and stuff like that, it might be a bit tricky. And I think we should test that out. Don't you think so? If you think we should test out an image, please write human image in the chat. Human image in the chat. So I'm only going to try that out if I see enough requests for it. If I don't see enough requests, then we'll move on. So once you click on the next point, it will register that point. You see, it has registered the point. And then you go to the next point you want and click again. It has registered that point. If you want to go back when you're using the lasso tool, don't use Ctrl Z because it will not work. What you need to do is when you want to go back, you click on backspace and it will delete the previous point you have just clicked. So if you click on Ctrl Z, it would not work. But if you click on backspace, just like as I clicked now, it has deleted the previous one that I did. So I'm going to put that back, put this next one and do the backspace again. You see that it has snapped to the next point that I clicked, but when I click on backspace, it goes back to where we were before now. So let's move ahead. I can only see one request for it, so we are going to be moving on. So now you see that this is a lot cleaner than the previous one we did, and it is more beginner friendly. Now all you need to do is when you're cropping an image, you make sure you start at one point and end at the same point that you started from. Because if you notice, let's do this again. I started at this point, and then I'm ending at that point. Once you come to the area you stopped, once you get back, you will see this circle that would appear close to the icon. Once you see that circle, you know that you are at the starting point, and then once you click on it, automatically it selects the image. So what you can do is you right click as usual, layer via copy. You do layer via copy, and obviously you get rid of the other image, the one that you've just copied it from. And the reason why I'm teaching you guys to always do layer via copy is so that if you have like an image that you want to either reference to, or maybe you just want to hide it and just keep, so in case maybe you make a mistake, you can go back to the initial image, right? Because that's like one of the best ways for you to be able to go back to what you were doing before now, right? So let's head over to the next one. Now the last one is a bit tricky for beginners, but I'll show you anyways, because we have a pretty contrasty image that can work for this. So let's go back to this and right click on magnetic lasso tool. This one is, once you click on where you want, it automatically snaps to the edges of the image depending on the type of image you have. So as you can see, it's automatically snapping by itself. So if you're following closely to the edge of the image, it will automatically be snapping. But in some cases, if you go outside of the image too much, then you see that it has snapped. You see all these points that's created. So all these are issues that you have. As well as it is good, it also has some issues. And then when you get to the end, as usual, you see the circle and you complete it, and then you have this. So this is the good part of it. It can snap to images, but the bad part of it is if you stay too far from the image, then it will snap to something else. Now that is one disadvantage of it, as well as the advantages that it has. It's easy, it's efficient, but it's too efficient that it sometimes might give you what you don't want. And then as usual, once you're done with the perfect image you're looking for, you right click, layer via copy, and boom, you can now get rid of the layer that you had before. And now to get rid of layers, simple. You click on the layer that you're working on, select the layer, and you either hit delete on your keyboard or you come and delete layer here. So we are going to use that example for this. We delete layer. This delete layer, and then let's use our delete keyboard, delete key on the keyboard. Let's hide this, then delete key on the keyboard. Boom, that's gone. And then boom, this other guy is also gone. Now, moving on to the final tool on the list that we have for selection, for the selection tools. This is kind of like my favorite because it basically defeats all that we've talked about before now. But the reason you should know this is so that you understand the fundamentals of Photoshop. Now we have the magic wand tool. Now this is also a parent tool, and its children tool also speak to the activity that the parent does. Now let's start from the magic wand tool, and its shortcut is W on the keyboard. Now once you select it, what the magic wand does, it selects colors of the same color range. It selects colors in the same color range. For example, if I click here, what the magic wand has done, it has selected all the colors that are in orange. All the colors that are in orange. And if I click here, it also does the same thing. All the colors that it can find that are in the same range. That is what it does. So when excuse me, when you're trying to use this, it's majorly for cropping purposes. So we want to crop this guy out. If we want to crop this guy out, all we need to do is we select the area that we want to get rid of. Select it, and automatically you see that it selected all the areas that we do not want. We don't want this white background, we want this image only. Now you can increase the tolerance and you can reduce the tolerance. What do I mean by tolerance? The tolerance is the amount at which to attack that particular color. Now if you notice, if I zoom in, if you notice, it's attacking the color on the box, but that's not what we want. We want it to be able to attack just the colors on the background. So we have to reduce the tolerance. And then we have different sample sizes. Is it by point sample? Is it on a 3 by 3 average? So it's 3 pixels by 3 pixels. So it's selecting 3 pixels on average. And if you guys remember what we spoke about earlier, pixels are the tiniest bit of dots on images that form up images. So that's from my own understanding. You know, different people. So that box is basically what is going to yeah, this box, that particular box is what is going to judge the color by. So all the colors that have the same color that is in the point sample that you selected. So let's give an example. There is a box here, right here, where I clicked on this, and it is by that box that I click on that is going to judge what is going to select. So if I click here, it selects all the colors that fall in the same range, fall in the same color range as what I have selected. And unfortunately, this guy here is a part of it. Right. Now, how do we correct this error? First off, how do we do that? By reducing the amount of the tolerance. We can reduce it to say 32. And then we can try again, and now you see that we have this side has not been selected because it's a bit darker than the color that we selected. How can we be able to not increase this guy again, but select this part. All you need to do is hold shift on the keyboard, and you notice that it shows up as a plus icon, and then you can add that color or that area. Once you select that area, it will also add it to the selection you have made. And right now you have made a perfect selection around your box. What do? You can now go to your layers panel and hide the area that you do not want. Or what do? Right click, select inverse, right click one more time, and then you do layer via copy to bring out your box from the background. And once we do that, layer via copy, as usual, we have this guy removed from the background. Now, having known this, the other options, or the children options in this, can actually help, and also they can, slow down our workflow. But we are going to try them out as well. Now let's move on to the object selection tool. Now this object selection tool, it automatically selects any object within the selection that you've made. So if I make a selection like this, it will automatically look for the object in that box that I drew around and select it. Now this is a powerful tool that Photoshop has included in their updates over the years, and as you can see, it gave us a very spot on selection of what we are looking to get. And so from this, you can just right click, layer via copy, and you're done. As simple as that. But in some cases where the background is not plain, you could struggle with that because it might select some other objects, can select some other things. And that's the reason why you need to be acquainted with other tools, so that you can use other tools to subsequent, or to should I say, to add to your skill set, to be able to, attack any problem that you come across in using Photoshop. So an example would be, say we have, I'm going to look for an image that has something that, let's use this. And then we do our normal selection. Now you see that this side is not part of the selection, but we want to get rid of everything in the background. What do? We can also swap to our magic wand. Remember, hold shift and add this selection. Okay, this is on the flip side. Now on the flip side, if you want to minus or subtract any selection, you hold alternate on the keyboard. Now once you hold alternate, you see that if we click on this area, we have all these places that were not selected added to the selection. We can also come to this area and also do the same thing. We need to subtract this area. Since we are trying to get rid of this, we need to subtract this. We hold alternate on the keyboard, subtract, and here we have this. So it's a combination of all the tools that you've learned to be able to achieve or to attain a particular goal that you have. Now, once you're done, you can now go and right click, layer via copy, and you're done. You have your box selected out. So this is it on the magic wand tool. Now there's a final one, which is quick selection tool. It's still not perfect, because I think it is experimental. So what this does is it helps as you draw across, it selects what you're trying to do. But like I said, it's experimental, so it's not something that I would dabble with if I'm new to Photoshop, right? So it's experimental. But anyways, sometimes it's spot on. You can just draw around the object you want it to select, and then it automatically selects it for you. And then if you have any loopholes that it has not selected, you can go over them and it will select. But it's basically like the same thing I said earlier. It's still experimental. If you want to experiment with this, feel free, go ahead. But the major ones we use are selection, object selection tool, and then the magic wand tool. Now, the final guy on selection tools, I think we have two final guys, but we are going to be touching one because the other guy is an advanced tool. So the next one we have is our crop tool. Excuse me. Next one we have is our crop tool. Our crop tool is basically for the document itself, not for images or any other thing. No, it's to crop the document to a particular size. Let's say you did something and it's too big, you wanted it to be square. You can actually use the crop tool. Once you click on the crop tool, it comes up with this bounding box. You can now select the area you want. Aha, we have a square now. I can now click OK, and it has cropped my document to square. That's basically what this guy does, right? Now, this other one is the frame tool. It's majorly for, or should I, for me to just say it is for framing your images, right? But like I said, it's an advanced tool. It's an advanced tool, so please, it's not something to experiment with just yet. All right, so moving over to moving over to the moving over to the retouching tools. Now, the retouching tools are kind of like my favorites. If you're here and you want to learn how to retouch images, I want you to say, I want you to type retouch in the chat box. Retouch in the chat box. Let's see. Okay. So the next class we're going to be having now is for the retouching tools. So you guys stay tuned. We're going to have our retouching tools come up shortly. All right, guys, welcome back. So let's talk about retouching. Now, what is retouching? You might say. I think most of the ladies here would say retouching for them is when they remake their hair or when they go to. I don't know if that's relaxing their hair or something like that. But in Photoshop, retouching should be the act of changing or advancing images or modifying images to either look more appealing or to look more cinematic, right? So the tools that you would use for these things are the tools that I'm going to be explaining the fundamentals on in our class today. So let's kick off with the first one. The first one is the eyedropper tool. Now, this guy is basically a color picker. If you click on the eyedropper tool, or you can see I on the keyboard. If you click on that and you click on any document, it automatically gives you the color for that. Do you see that? It gives you the color for that on the info panel. But if you select the actual eyedropper tool, which is the parent one, it just automatically gives you the color. It selects that color as your foreground color. So you guys should observe this. If I select this, it changes to that particular color. So you can either do it by point sample, which is the same thing like what we did with Magic Wand tool. So it selects that point sample on that particular color that your cursor selects, or you could do it on average, right? So it do once you click on it, the average of the three colors that it selects would be what it to sample for you. So that could be your choice, but I always like to leave it at point sample so that I can be exact and direct. Now, you click on this, you have the color that we want to use, right? Now, that is that for that, and all the materials here are kind of like the same thing, but this one is for 3D, and not every system is 3D compatible, so we're not going to be touching that. And then this color sampler tool is basically the same thing. It gives you like a breakdown of the color on the info panel. It gives you a breakdown of the color. It gives you uh, yeah, it gives you the red, the green, the blue of the color, like all the RGB contents of that particular color that has been selected. So that's basically what it does. But for for a start, I think we should go always with the eyedropper tool. And this can also help you in case of, let's say, a client sends you an image and say, oh, pick colors from these. I mean, the person has already given you a blueprint, or the person has already given you expo on what to select. And then you can go ahead and select that color and be on your way in your design. Now, that's standard, and the shortcut for that is I on the keyboard. Now, moving to the next one, which is the patch tool. This is a very interesting one, and a lot of you are going to love this because this is how we make manipulations in Photoshop. So let's get an image. All right, we've gotten our image. Now we want to, let's say we want to get rid of this Photoshop here, right? And we don't know how to do that. That's where the patch tool comes in. Now, the patch tool is basically, which is a J on the keyboard, is basically a tool that replaces a selected area with pixels from another image or from another area of the image. Now, we can do it in different ways. We can do source to destination. We selected around this. We can just right click and say fill the content aware fill. But remember, before you edit anything in Photoshop, since it is a raster based editing software, you need to rasterize. Since this image you brought in is still in its smart image form, you have to rasterize. So after rasterizing, you can right click, go to content aware fill, and then you can just click OK. It will automatically fill that area of the image for you. Or let's select that and get rid of that. You can still go to your patch tool and try to replace the image yourself. You keep trying until you successfully replace the image by yourself. And then you right click, and then you go to your move tool, right click, and then deselect it. Deselect. Now, you see that these are two ways that you can do that. You can either do that the quick way, or you do it the standard way by using the patch tool to patch the area that you want to get rid of. Right, you can do it to basically anything. Let's try a different image entirely. So let me look for another image. Alright, we have a different image here. Now, this is an AI generated image. Now, we want to get rid of, say, what do we want to get rid of? We want to get rid of this guy here. Right. We select it. Make sure that we've rasterized our layer. And we now move to the area we want to select from. And boom. That guy has been gotten rid of. It's just as simple as that. We can also try the same thing for other elements in the image. Right. Let's see something simple. Something like this. Select it. Make sure your selection is clean. And then we can say, let's replace it with this. And there you have it. It's not clean. It's not that good. But you get the idea of what we're trying to create. Now, so these are ways that you could do that. You can also, like I said, use the content aware fill. If you go back to your marquee tool, right click and then use content aware fill. Photoshop would automatically look for areas of the images that it can use to fill this. And once it does, these are the green areas that you have highlighted here, and you click OK. It will try to automatically fill the image for you. And in some cases, it can do a good job. In some cases, it will do a poor job. Like in this case, it did a poor job. It didn't really do a good job. But you have an idea on how that works. So your creativity can run free, can run wild, and you can create masterpieces out of using this. Now, that is with our patch tool, which is the parent tool of this brush, this particular tool. Now we have other areas like the spot healing brush. Now this spot healing brush is more like a light version of the patch tool. A light version of the patch tool. And now it's kind of like something that you use for smaller areas that you want to attack. You know, if you want to cater to small areas or tiny areas, then fine, you can actually do that. So let's say we want to get rid of some of these grains here. All you need to do is to make sure that you have a particular area selected that you want to pick from. And to do that, once you have your spot healing brush selected, you hold alternate and select a particular area that you want to retouch the new area with. So once you do that, to show you the spot healing brush tool automatically samples pixels to correct a spot with one step. To manually set the source, use the healing brush tool. And then you click don't show again, you click continue, hold alternate, like I said, select the area that you want, and then you paint and just tap. So it automatically pick from that area you selected earlier and paste it. Right, so that's this for that. Now the spot healing brush, the healing brush itself is kind of like the same thing. All you need to do is hold alternate. Once you hold alternate, you see that the icon changes. You select the area you want to, and you see what happens. It picks that area, and then once you dab it, it will sample that area on the next place that you want it to. So that is that for the spot healing brush. Now there's one thing I want you guys to understand, that this can affect a particular layer or it can affect an entire layer. What do I mean by that? What I mean is you can decide for it to affect only this layer that we're working on, or you can decide for it to affect all the layers you have selected. So let's go back to the healing brush. Now if you click on current layer, it will affect the current layer. If you click on current and below layers, it will affect from the layer that is at the top, that is selected, and below, all the layers from here below. But if you select all layers, it will affect both the one you selected, the one at the top, and then the one below. Now, the reason being that sometimes you could have, let's say, sometimes you could have like this particular flower on a separate layer. You could have these droplets on a separate layer. You can have the background on a separate layer. You can have uh, these white chocolates on a separate layer, all of them coming together to make an image. So when you select all layers in that aspect, it will select pixels from all the layers in your layers panel. And whatever you're doing with your content aware fill, it will select it from all those layers. But if you're doing current layer only, which is advisable if you're trying to do maybe a pattern, or if you're trying to get rid of a particular thing on a particular layer, then it's advisable to use just current layer. Now, having said that, it's the same thing. Is applicable to all of them. It's applicable to all of them that have that option. It's applicable to all of them. So whenever you see uh, current layer and all layers, do well to know the one that you're working with. If it is a current layer, you're trying to just get rid of a particular thing, you work with your current layer. If you're trying to do it to the whole document, then feel free to make all layers selected. Now, moving on to a very important tool and a very diverse tool is our brush tool. Now, this brush tool can be used for several things, and I will start with the most popular one that I think everybody knows. So let's start with light. Creating lights on Photoshop is primarily done with the brush tool, and I'll show you how. So let's look for something that requires light. Yeah, this guy. Now, when trying to create something like this, you remember, if you have a layer rasterized, you can edit on that layer. And if you edit on this layer, then everything is on that particular layer. If you move one thing, they all move together. So it's mostly advisable that when creating anything you want to create, make sure that you have new layers. So for the lights, we are going to create a new layer, and that layer has to be directly above the layer that we want to use the light on. Excuse me. Now, using a brush to create a light is fairly simple but technical. Depending on the color of the light you want to use, you have to know the colors involved in creating any light. Now, for example, if you want to create a warm and hot light, you know that the colors are supposed to be warm. The colors you're going to be using are supposed to be warm. Now, how do we do that? First off, let's select a warm color. This is a warm color. Orange is a warm color. So let's go for something bright. Now, on our color spectrum, we go for something bright, like in this color or in this range, and we click OK. So now if we dab, you see that we have a very soft brush. And for you to achieve a soft or a hard brush, here's how you do that. When you have your brush selected, all you need to do is you right click on your document space, and you will see hard your size and your hardness. You can increase the size here and also increase the hardness here. So if I increase the hardness and reduce the size, once I click, you see how hard the brush is around the edges. Or if I right click and set my hardness to 0, it would give me a very soft brush. So if I click, you see that the edges are very soft. So that's the difference between the hard and the soft. Now we have a very soft brush, and we've done this aspect of it. Now we've selected a very warm color. Remember, light always has the brightest part of it, and then it spreads out to, you know, give out its actual this actual color, or the natural color that it was designed to give out. So let's call this our natural color that the light was designed to give out. All you now need to do is, as you have the color selected or the size of the brush selected, when you want to do the next step after giving the first touch, you have to reduce your size. You reduce your size a bit, you come and you dab again. So now you have a very warm brush. Now when you want to start getting the hot part of the light, all you need to do is you need to change the color to a brighter part of that color that you're using. If it's a warm color, you need to go to the brighter part of it. So you need to come here and increase the brightness to something like this, and then you reduce the size, go to the center of the image and you dab. Now you repeat that process and then until you have the brightest part. Now you see that we have the brightest part, and then we have the soft, the actual color of the light. Now when you're done with this, you can actually set it here and then it's almost ready, right? But that's not the case. Most times it depends on the type of light you're trying to portray. If you're trying to portray this sun kind of light, then this is perfect for what you want to do. But you notice how it is not actually glowing on the elements that you've added it to. Yes, that's because there's what we call blend modes in Photoshop. Now we are going to also dive into blend modes in Photoshop. But for the sake of this, the blend mode that actually goes with light, you will see them here in this section. You have lighter color, linear dodge, color dodge, screen, and lighter color. Yeah, and linear dodge, right? Yeah. Okay, no, linear dodge here. So these are the ones that we have, and these are the ones that affect how a light shines. Now the ones that I would advise that you use, right, would be the ones that I would advise you to use I don't know if you guys are seeing this. On this part where we have the normal, you have lighting, you have screen, you have color dodge, you have linear dodge, and you have lighter color. So all of these are the ones that have to do with light. Anything that has to do with light, you're going to see them. We have lighting, color dodge, screen, color dodge, linear dodge, and then the lighter color. But for this case, we're going to be using linear dodge because what it does is it actually gives that shine to whatever layer that is selected. And since this is a light layer, if you observe, if we go back to normal, you see that it doesn't have that effect. It just looks like it's something that you just put on it. But when you come to the linear dodge, you see that it has this glow effect on this 6 that it was added to, and it has this shine effect on this. So this is like one of the important uses of brush. This is somewhat an advanced tutorial, but I'm breaking it down so you guys can understand how to use a brush tool to create light. Now, although people have made it easy, they have like stock images of lights like this, but you need to also understand how it works so you can create yours for yourself. Now, this is the fundamentals of using a brush tool for that. Now, you can also use your brush tool to write. You can use your brush tool to sign signatures. You can use it to draw. You can use it to do a lot of things. Now, I'm going to just show you how to use it to write, and then you can explore with that fundamental knowledge. Now, the best size to use for your brush to draw or to write would be from 3 to 10. Let's use a dark color so it's be visible. So from 3 to 10, you can see this. Let's go to 3. Now, this is me using my brush tool to write. Now, this could be important to you if you're the type that always scribbles, tries to like, oh, okay, this is the box, this is the cover. If you're the type of person that likes to scribble when trying to give out a brand guideline to someone, or you're trying to do something to show someone, then you can use this to actually get your point across, right? Your pen tool or your brush tool can actually be used to stroke items. You can actually use it to, oh, okay, let's outline this. These are things that you could use it for. And you could also use it to right click, increase the size. You can use it to paint over things. Depending on what you want, you can use it to color a particular background. You can also use it to make a background, make a certain type of background that you want. So let's say I increase the size and I just want to soften the base of my image to be this way. This can be done with your brush tool. Now, these are things that you can use your brush tool to achieve. And you also have your pencil tool, but your pencil tool is like the block version of, you see how pencil tool is? It's like the block version of your brush tool. It's like the hard version of it. It's always going to be strong. It's always going to be hard, right? Now, for these other aspects, these are going to be in advanced classes, the mixer brush and the color replacement tool. But these are the fundamentals that you can actually use for normal flyer design, graphics design, logo design, and etc. Now, clone stamp is also a retouching tool. It's something that you can use to duplicate certain areas of an image. So you can copy this image and paint it somewhere else. Maybe you're trying to fill a certain area of an image with certain things. You can actually do just that. Let's try that with an image. Right, so I got this image from Pinterest. Now, I want to copy this and make it show up somewhere here in my background. I'm working on the background and I want to do the same. So I right click, I rasterize, and then I pick my clone stamp, which is S on the keyboard. Um, our brush is B on the keyboard, then S is for clone stamp. So I increase the size. I can right click, increase the size, increase the softness, but I want to make it very soft. And the clone stamp functions just like the patch tool and the healing brush tool and the spot healing brush tool, but in its own uniqueness, it copies and pastes on the same layer or all layers. Now, if you are doing it on the current layer and I click on this area and then I come and paint, you can see that I have duplicated this area on the same document. So that's basically what the clone stamp does. It copies an area of your image and paste it on another one. You can also use it for things like what we did before with the healing brush and the spot healing brush. You can use it to manipulate images to make it look like a certain thing is in a certain place. Another example would be for something like this. Let's use this image of a pancake. Now, once we rasterize, let's zoom in on the image and would say I want to replace this area with this. I would hold alternate on the keyboard, select the area I want to move it from, and gently place it here. And you see, it gets rid of the areas that I do not want. Let's say I also want to replace this guy here. I can do the same thing and get rid of this biscuit, this Oreo, and there we have it taken care of. You just need to come back, keep clicking on the area you want, come back, and voila, we have that gone. It's no longer there. So moving over to